Hello and welcome to Inside Politics. I'm Anastasiya Lavrina. Over just 3 days, US Vice President JD Vance traveled to Armenia and Azerbaijan, signing a civil nuclear framework in Yerevan and a strategic partnership charter in Baku. These steps have the potential to reshape security, energy and connectivity across the entire region. It was clearly not a symbolic visit. It marked one of the most substantive US engagements in the South Caucasus in recent years, with concrete agreements, institutional commitments and long-term projects on the table. For both capitals, the outcomes go beyond the protocol. They signal a deeper American role in regional infrastructure, defense cooperation and economic integration, areas that directly affect the balance of power and future stability. In many ways, this may prove to be a historic moment, not because of statements, but because of the practical steps now set in motion. So what are the real outcomes of this visit, and what prospect does this new phase of engagement create for the region going forward? Joining me now from Istanbul, Turkey, is Yashar Sarı, director of the Heydar Aliyev Center for Eurasian Studies at Ibn Khaldun University. And from Washington, D.C., United States, today with us is Glenn Howard, president and chairman of Saratoga Foundation. Dear experts, welcome to Inside Politics. And Mr. Howard, let's start with you. The visit of JD Vance to the South Caucasus produced two different outcomes: a civil nuclear framework with Armenia and a strategic partnership charter with Azerbaijan. Do you see this as balanced diplomacy or a deliberate division of roles for each country in Washington's regional strategy?
I would call it at first an indication by the Trump administration, as Vice President Vance said yesterday, that the United States has underappreciated its relationship with Azerbaijan. And I think now that there's now fully going to be a balance in that relationship between the United States and Azerbaijan and Armenia. That American policy has always favored Armenia because of the domestic lobby inside of the United States and the diaspora. And so now what this visit indicates is the full recognition of the transactional foreign policy of the Trump administration. And so they're certainly, as he said, they underappreciated Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan was the last country to leave Afghanistan. Azerbaijan soldiers participated in NATO operations in Afghanistan, and Vice President Vance yesterday emphasized that point, that Azerbaijan was with the United States, and that the United States kind of, as he said, underappreciated Azerbaijan, which means that they didn't really reflect a level of cooperation that was, in the eyes of the United States, was equal. Now, I would say that this partnership is gone from being a partnership and a relationship to one that's now more strategic. And I think that's very important, because you keep in mind that when JD Vance flew from Armenia to Azerbaijan, he flew along the TRIP corridor, the Zangezur corridor. And I think that is a reflection of the strategic importance of commercial activity and connectivity of the United States with Azerbaijan. In other words, it indicates that Azerbaijan is a part of a relationship with the United States where the whole commercial element of it, like Baku, Tbilisi, Ceyhan, was kind of pointed southward.
Absolutely. So, Mr. Howard, we will definitely come back to the discussion of the Trump corridor, a very important, I will say, a significant project for the region itself. But now, Mr. Sarı, the question to you from Ankara's perspective: how does this new United States engagement change the strategic balance in the South Caucasus? Does it implement Turkey's role or complicate it?
I mean, the first result of this visit by the American Vice President JD have the two significant impact. And the first is the regional level impact, which is the especially this trip corridor opening or starting the process of the building this trip corridor will have the positive impact on Turkey and Turkey's relation with the both Azerbaijan, Armenia, and broader region is the other side of the Caspian Sea. The second thing is this visit also significant because the Americans are keeping their promise. Means that they are not just signing the agreement, but also implementing this agreement and sharing the similar view with Turkey to creating a more peaceful Caucasus region that will bring quick development, especially relation between the Turkey and the Armenia. So this is the staying behind of this peaceful process within the region. Within the region give chance to Turkey the relation with both Armenia and also having the more shorter way to reaching the broader Turkic world too. The other result is what we see from here is the Russian and the Iranian position in the region is declining, means that their influence declining. That is the more because of the long time these two actors playing more negative role in the region, not really promoting negotiation between Armenia and Azerbaijan to solving the Karabakh problem. This time they are not, at least this point, is not real influential actors and giving the more opportunities to other actors like Turkey to play a more positive role too.
Very interesting. And indeed, we will also touch the elements of Russia and Iran and their presence in the region after all of this new engagement is happening today. But before that, Mr. Howard, coming back to the so-called Trump corridor, for the first time in years, Washington looks structurally involved in connectivity projects like Trump corridor and the Middle Corridor. Is the United States now becoming a geopolitical architect in the region rather than just a political broker?
I would say the answer is yes, but it's not by design, it's by accident. And it's what I call being opportunistic. I think the Trump administration, when they came in, President Trump had an idea for a peace agenda. So he kind of envisioned around the world the United States being a broker, bringing about peace, as he's trying to do between Russia and Ukraine. And Armenia and Azerbaijan was on that agenda, and it was also what they called low-hanging fruit because it was pretty much close to a deal to begin with. So the Trump administration was being very opportunistic, realizing there was an opportunity for this, and they jumped at that opportunity, and they're wrapping themselves with the idea of commercial activity in the same way the Clinton administration tried to advance Baku Tbilisi Ceyhan as commercial connectivity. But there hasn't been this type of level of presence by the United States commercially since Baku Tbilisi Ceyhan. So now you have another case where you have the trip corridor now being completely reorienting itself towards the south, towards Turkey, and it's basically changing the geopolitics of the South Caucasus because it's making Georgia less relevant. And it's making Azerbaijan and Armenia really the core point of this relationship. And as we know, as your guest in Istanbul knows, the Azerbaijan and Turkey are discussing overflights, questions with the border and opening it up. And so Zangezur is just part of a larger piece of the chessboard that we're seeing now. And I think that, you got to keep in mind, Zangezur and that corridor for trip is really trans-regional. And so that's the key thing we need to keep focusing on is the impact of that. And obviously, as you saw last night in Azerbaijan, the Haydar Aliyev Center there in Baku was wrapped in an American flag. And so the Russians obviously don't like this. they kind of frown upon the United States taking the American flag and putting it right in the middle of the Zangezur corridor. They may not be publicly upset about it, but they certainly don't like this. But it's a new geopolitical reality.
Well, Mr. Howard, one more question to you before I turn to Mr. Sari. So, Mr. Howard, you touched Russia and their reaction bit. Immediately after this, Moscow reacted quickly, saying it will deepen ties with both capitals, with Azerbaijan and Baku. Do you expect Russia to respond through diplomacy, economics, or more assertive pressure?
I think they'll respond economically. Obviously, they're keeping the pressure on Armenia, and the discussions about the control of Armenian railways, which were owned by Russian companies, that will be the center point of that. But I think the U.S. pressure on Russia will continue, and I think Pashinyan will move that forward. So yes, there will be pressure, but I think more of the pressure will be on Armenia to advance. But again, the United States is offering its hand to Russia, trying to improve relations, and they're trying to end the Ukraine war. So they're arriving in the region with the mission of peace. So it's really hard for the Russians to kind of say no to that. And so it's a very clever strategy by the United States because they're using the idea of commercial connectivity. And what they're doing, though, in reality, is the Russians and Iran realize is the United States is driving a wedge between Russia and Iran. Just look at the map and the routing of the corridor. And also one other thing, I think it's very important for your audience to know that Azerbaijan is emerging as what they call a middle power. And so that's very important. So we have the middle corridor, Zangezur, and the role of Central Asia, but you also have Azerbaijan emerging in the region as a middle power. And I would keep in mind that the NATO summit in Turkey is just around the corner. And I think that's the Trump administration is thinking about that, and is thinking about a new part of the world that is opening up, and looking at Turkey, Azerbaijan, and Zangezur and the Trip Corridor are all part of this strategy by, I would say, a grand strategy by the Trump administration. It may not be successful, but it's certainly on the horizon. And I would keep in mind that the NATO summit is going to be very, very important. And this is just a part of that strategy.
Indeed, a lot of, I would say, issues related to global politics going to be raised during this summit. Mr. Sari, if Turkey and Armenia manage to reopen borders, and this issue was also raised by Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan during the press conference together with JD Vance in Armenia, how transformative could that be for the entire South Caucasus balance, not just bilaterally, but regionally?
I mean, if I remember why Turkey closed the border with Armenia, because of the Armenian occupation of the Karabakh region. I mean, the Turkey and the Azerbaijan in this case is acting together, so it's not the separate case. So already Turkey and Azerbaijan took some certain steps. First, Azerbaijan delivered the oil to Armenia, and permitting the third countries like Kazakhstan sending the food products to Armenia. So
yes, the cargo is being delivered from Russia also through Azerbaijan, Georgia to Armenia.
Yeah, that's also important. Permitting Russians or bringing the products through Azerbaijan, the Armenia is important point. So this process is already started. So that will have a positive impact. Already Turkey, from the Istanbul, there is a flight, and Turkish Airlines, starting from the March, is flying to Istanbul to Yerevan. So this is the good case. And if there is the problem of between Turkey and Armenia and Azerbaijan, Armenia need to establish trust. If this trust should establish, the Caucasus region can turn the economic zone cooperation area. I mean, Turkey and Azerbaijan first development related Zangezur corridor to Russia and Iran, but they didn't take the action. I mean, the 3+3 platform to creating a peaceful atmosphere for Caucasus and building this corridor, they didn't respond. And the Americans, under the Trump quickly grabbed the opportunity and they invested. So for Turkey and Azerbaijan, doesn't much matter who is promoting this idea, but the much better who is building that one and who is reality. So in that case, Turkey is happy in this case, having the Zengezur corridor and having those relation with the Armenian too. One issue which is even this Vance visit is mentioned related to Armenia. For example, Vance mentioned that U.S. companies can provide up to $9 billion worth of nuclear-related goods and the services to Armenia. So this is two reasons is important for Turkey and more or less for Azerbaijan too. Armenia has very old nuclear power plant, Medzamor, which is the same type with the Chernobyl nuclear power plant built in Soviet time. So that's a very environmentally, ecologically very dangerous one. So replacing that one to the new small modular reactor, we also support that process. The second thing is to need to mention that Turkey and Azerbaijan wants to Armenia to have a close relation with them, so that way Armenia will be less depends on the Iranian oil and natural gas as well as the Russian ones.
Absolutely,
So
this is a good point you raised here. Energy diversification indeed was also highlighted at the press conference, and you rightly pointed out the Metsamor plant actually has already needs some modernization or new involvement and new investments. It was a big problem not only for Armenia but for the region itself. Mr. Howard, another very important element of this visit is that the strategic partnership charter with Azerbaijan goes beyond diplomacy. It mentions defense cooperation, cybersecurity, AI, energy, and also transport corridors, as we already discussed. So which of these areas you think Washington actually prioritized first? And I want to bring your attention more on the security cooperation, defense cooperation two countries may follow in the nearest time.
Well, I was hoping that I would see a deal on the F-16s for Azerbaijan, but I didn't see that. So I guess I'll have to be satisfied that Azerbaijan's going to get patrol boats from the United States. So let's focus on the counterterrorism cooperation, because that's clearly focused at Iran. And it's another kind of reflection that Azerbaijan is a security partner in the Caspian. So you need to kind of look at the broader perspective of not just Azerbaijan and TRIP, but also Azerbaijan as a security provider in the Caspian Sea. And so this is very important because, there's two dominant naval powers in the Caspian, that's Russia and Iran. And so the United States is now engaging with Azerbaijan in this security cooperation, which is a really good start. It did begin back with the Bush administration and Rumsfeld. They actively developed cooperation with Azerbaijan before the following administrations of Obama and Biden enacted the 907 and restricted and went away from that agreement. Now 907 we're hoping will eventually be removed, and sadly it's not mentioned. But let's look forward and keep hoping that defense cooperation will improve. And I would say that just commercial activity is also going hand in hand with the beginning of the security cooperation. And, and I think the fact that the Trump administration and JD Vance are looking at maps, they're looking at the region. When JD Vance talked about Azerbaijan's participation in Afghanistan, that was his recognition of Azerbaijan's role in the region in Central Asia. And I think that he has a perspective that goes beyond just Azerbaijan as a regional partner, but is more as a kind of a larger strategic partner of the United States that's in the beginning stages of it, because we got to move on from all this old stereotypes about Azerbaijan. And Azerbaijan is not the Azerbaijan of the 1990s or the 2000s. It's now we're now close to 2030. Azerbaijan is a new rising power in the Caucasus, and it's going to be a net provider of not just electricity, also in potentially in peacekeeping. For example, let's talk about Gaza. Azerbaijan has been invited to participate in the Gaza peacekeeping operations. It didn't happen, didn't materialize, but still, that is a reflection of the thinking about Azerbaijan is changing. So, who would have ever thought that potentially there might be
and Azerbaijan already joined the American Initiative board of as a founding member of this initiative. Yes, promoted by the United States.
Yeah, that's another aspect too. I mean, that's another important aspect because President Aliyev is going to come to the United States on February 19th to participate in the first meeting along with Pashinyan. So the level of connectivity and interaction diplomatically goes, because each time there's President Aliyev goes to the United States, there's a conversation. And when Vance was in Baku, there was a conversation. So you have this unprecedented level of dialogue occurring between the United States and Azerbaijan, as well as between the United States and Armenia. And that's not occurring between Russia and the United States, for example. You don't see President Putin going to Washington for the Board of Peace. So this is very important because the whole dynamics is changing.
Well, and one more question, Mr. Sori. We don't have much of time, but indeed it's very interesting to know your opinion briefly. As it was quite logically pointed out, the Charter also includes security assistance and maritime protection in the Caspian. How significant is this step military, and would Ankara welcome a stronger American presence as a stabilizing factor, or prefer to keep the balance more regional?
I mean, as you know, Turkey and Azerbaijan has military alliances and already signed the Shusha Declaration. And before even this Shusha Declaration, Azerbaijan army is trained by the NATO standard and the help of the Turkey. So this is the extent including the American contribution to making the Azerbaijan security structure stronger. If they invest, the American companies invest the defense industry of the Azerbaijan, cooperation through Turkey will, of course, Azerbaijan will benefit. And let's not forget, Azerbaijan already member of the Partnership for Peace program of the NATO. So that way, the Azerbaijan has a base develop that close relation, not multilateral like NATO, but bilateral defense relation with the United States in that case.
Absolutely. So, dear experts, unfortunately, we are running out of time. That's why I thank you very much for joining Inside Politics today. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Well, what we are seeing is not just diplomacy, but the beginning of concrete political and economic shifts, agreements that could influence security arrangements, trade routes, and strategic alliances for years to come. Whether these initiatives translate into real stability or simply intensify regional competition will depend on what happens next. Not the statements, but the implementation. And we will definitely continue to follow these developments closely. And thank you for watching Inside Politics on A News. I'm Anastasiya Lavrina, and I see you next time.